Hey, Stan and Alicia here from the Honey Company, and we are here on our very first YouTube Live Ask Me Anything session. So we have been collecting questions and comments from email, Facebook, Instagram, all the social media platforms, and we will hope that you guys will ask some live questions here about beekeeping. So we are Stan and Alicia Moulton. Stan is a fourth-generation beekeeper, and we've been running the honey company, or his family has, since 1890, and he has over 30 years of beekeeping experience and continues to learn all the time. So, want to say hi?
Hi, welcome everybody. We hope you got some good questions for you. We're ready to field your questions with some good answers. So, thanks for joining us today, and I hope that this winter's been a tough winter here. I hope it's treated your bees well.
Okay, so anyway, we are working on, oh, that's the wrong. Let me just get the chat working real quick. Pop out the chat. Okay, so if you have any questions as we're going along, please add them to the chat. But we already have some questions collected from before. So if you want to, should I just ask you the first one that somebody sent?
Tell somebody else has a better one. Let's start with the ones we've already got.
For sure. Okay. So the first question that we got was from Marina, and she said, do you have any suggestions on transferring nucs? She wants to know about the process of transferring nucs.
Okay, transferring nucs. We do it a specific way, maybe a little different than some other companies do. We like to transfer the nucs from our box out of our box into the customer's box, and it gives them a chance to inspect the queen bee. So that's the main reason why we do it that way. We could put it in a cardboard nuc box. We have those available if you'd like, but then you don't have a chance to ask us questions and get them answered at the time that you pick your nuc up. So you get to have an audience with the queen. We get to look for the brood pattern, so you know you're taking home a good queen, and you'll get to identify eggs and see how much honey's in there and pollen, give you a better idea of what you need to do when you get home. So that's the way that we transfer them. So tips for doing it better or more efficiently or easier or safer. Make sure that when you come to pick your nuc up, you've got your smoker. You never want to travel anywhere with bees without your bee gear. It's a good tip. So on bee gear specifically, you need your, in case there's trouble, you need your veil, you need your gloves, you need your smoker, very important, your smoker. Not only the smoker, but matches and smoker fuel, right? And a way to stop the smoker when you're done. So if you need to put the smoker out to put it back in your vehicle for some reason, then be sure to bring a cork for your smoker, or have something ready to put the fire out. Let's see. Need a strap, a ratchet strap. That'll keep your hive contained in case you got to break fast or swerve hard or something while you're on your way home, and heaven forbid the bees get loose inside your vehicle when you're taking them home. Not always do people pick them up in a pickup. So quite often, at least half of the time, people are bringing their van or their car, put them in the trunk, or they might be right up in the minivan with you. So make sure you've got a strap, some duct tape, or bungee cord, or something to hold the hive down. That's another important thing to watch for. There's probably more tips, but those are some of the basic ones. Let's see. We always pick up the nucs, have our nuc pickup scheduled for evening. So the reason for that is that the foraging bees will be home, and so you're taking home all the bees and not leaving any of them behind when you pick them up. So we plan that for the evening time, and it's a fun social event too. It's a good time to ask questions, other beekeepers and us, whatever questions you might have about bees. That's a good occasion to do that. We don't have our exact nuc pickup day scheduled yet this year. It's been such a crazy winter. We've got a tentative date on the calendar, but whether we follow through with that one or not, for sure, it might be a week later. We don't know yet. So.
Okay. anything else about nucs?
That's-
Okay, so she also asked, which I think is a really valuable question. Okay, so by the way, I'm just interrupting because I'm seeing more people coming on to this YouTube live. So if you have a beekeeping question, please add it to the chat and we'll see it and then respond to it. It will take a few seconds for it to post and then we can answer your questions live. For now, we're going to answer some that we've gotten over email and text and on social platforms. So the next question from Marina again is, can you explain what to look for on check-ins on the bees? How often should we check them? What are good signs and what are bad signs? And is it okay if I give that one a go real quick?
Sure.
Okay. So, excuse me, part of our new online courses that we've just released this spring, they're sort of based around the 4 essential questions for hive inspections. So the 4 essential questions are: first, do the bees have enough room? Second, how is my queen? Third, are they healthy? And fourth, is there honey? So those are the questions that beekeepers ask themselves when they're, looking in the hive. So they'll first say, okay, do the bees have enough room? Do I need to add space by adding a super or rearranging the resources or, extracting some honey and putting some empty frames back? And then how is my queen? We're going to look for the overall, making sure the colony is live and organized and active, and that you see eggs and brood of all the stages in the hive. So that's another important one. And then the third one, are they healthy? We're going to look for the health of the bees and the health of the brood. We're going to look for any diseases or weird things that we might see. And then if there's honey, then we extract it throughout the season. So we go into a ton more detail about each of those questions in our beekeeping courses. Like we have one course based around each question, basically. So you can get a ton more information by signing up. Start with our free course and then kind of work your way through those. And you'll get a lot of really useful information about that. We've been working for over a year to put that all together. So you want to know more about looking in your colony, that's just kind of basic overview, and our courses will help you get the more detailed stuff.
Okay.
Do you want to add to that at all?
No, I don't think so. You did a good job with that one.
Okay.
What's the next question?
So let's see. Clara says, I'd like to know how different climates or temperatures affect the activity and health of honeybees.
Temperature. Okay. I'd like to know how the different temperature and climates affect the activity. So this year, we're about a whole month late in Utah. So Sanpete County is different than Wasatch Front, but still we've had 2 days ago was the first cleansing flight that the bees had really all winter long, which is just not normal. We should have had pollen coming in on Valentine's Day. That's the middle of February, roughly. Along the Wasatch Front, that's the time when pollen starts to come in. So that's when the big trees start to bud out. The catkins start to open. So silver maple and box elder and cottonwoods and birch trees, those all should have been out a long time ago. So the climate this year and the temperature is affected the bees greatly. I imagine we've lost more colonies. We've probably suffered more losses because it's been such a cold, long winter and late spring. So depending on where you're at, and I'm curious to look in one colony that I know that's been in the shade all winter long. They haven't had any solar gain at all winter long. And so I'm wondering if they made it through or not. They had plenty of honey and they were free of mites and disease. So we'll see how the temperature, not only the temperature, but the location where they're at can affect the average temperature. This one's down in a canyon where there's nothing but shade. So that's just our local climate and temperature right now, but there's lots of other extremes too that would be an answer to that question. In the summer, sometimes it can get too hot. Sometimes it's too cold in the winter. It's different every year.
And since bees are, cold-blooded or they, are more active when it's warm, and they kind of shut down when it's cold. So that temperature regulates, like determines how they're functioning within their hive, if they're producing or not.
Right. So clustering is one way the bees have of dealing with temperature changes. When it gets too cold, they'll cluster. So when they cluster, there's a whole bunch of other concerns that might affect the colony's health. So they've got to maintain the heat in there by snuggling together. And then if honey is out of their reach when they're clustered, they could starve to death, even though there might still be honey in the hive. So I imagine there's been some of that happen this year. As we open up colonies, inspect them, we'll probably see some bees that have died, even with honey in the hive. So they can starve yet have honey in the other end of the hive.
Okay. So I have kind of a long question from Matt, who emailed this in. He says, I appreciate you doing this because I could really use some help. I have purchased 3 to 4 nucs from you over the years and have been enjoying the journey of beekeeping. This fall, I checked for mites and they were so low I didn't need to do anything. I only took off 2 frames of honey and fed my 2 colonies with sugar syrup until they would not take it anymore. They had plenty of resources to winter with. I additionally put in some sugar patties on top of the frames. I also figured I could keep my bees warmer in the winter. When spring came, they would hit the ground running. So he also insulated the hives with foam. And then he says, 2 days ago, because it was warm, I was excited to see how both colonies were doing. I was extremely hopeful because both colonies were strong. However, I found both colonies completely dead. After all the hard work, it's tempting not to give beekeeping another try, but I have decided to continue on. And so he's kind of wondering why his bees died. Like, was it something he did wrong? Was it something? Yeah. Do you want to comment on that? And then he also shared a picture with us. I don't know how to put that up. Can you see on my phone? He shared this picture with us of his colonies. Okay.
I can't see anything, Matt, that you've done wrong there. As you described what you've preparations you've made for wintering, and the detail that you've paid to getting them through. I don't know that I have an answer. Sometimes I just have to say I don't know why your bees died. We can usually figure it out. Quite often, more often than not, we can diagnose what went wrong in the hive if we have a look in there. One thought I had was, did they have any dysentery? As you look in the hive, were there any signs? Were there brown spots on the tops of the frames in there? Was there a pile of dead bees in the bottom of the colony? Or were they just missing? Were all the bees gone? So there's always a few more things you can do some little detective work if you open up the hive and look in there. So, but from your description of what you did, I don't have a good answer for you other than to say don't get discouraged, because if you think you might want to just quit beekeeping because of the expense of replacing dead bees every year, there's always a chance you can catch a swarm. Get on the swarm list, put up some swarm traps. Maybe you'll catch a swarm, and maybe there's always a chance that some bees might just move into your boxes right in your yard if you're lucky. So I would say don't blame yourself, don't get discouraged, and if you're inclined to continue, please do. We need more beekeepers, not less beekeepers.
Mm-hmm. And then I just wanted to also add that we have an online course called Are My Bees Healthy? And in it, it has like a complete troubleshooting guide about, common things that happen to people's beehives that make them die over the winter. There's not always something we can do. It's not always something we did wrong, but it can kind of help you know, like, if you see this, it might mean this is happening, that sort of thing. And that's a troubleshooting guide in our online courses. Let's see, we have, so Michelle Buswell, I hope I said that right, said mine died and I attribute it to what Stan said about it being cold and food store out of reach. They were frozen in time. So many bees, frustrating.
So Michelle, the type of hive might help if you're, so remember, hot air rises, heat rises, and so the bees like their honey their food storage for the winter placed on the top in the top box, and right underneath the lid is where they'll end up in the later part of the winter. And so, if you make sure you've got plenty of honey in the top, there's a better chance that they'll make it through the winter. It's not a bad idea to keep bees in a over to give honey. So I don't know what kind of hive you
she
keep your
maybe.
bees in, but those are just some thoughts about preventing bees from starving to death when there's a frame of honey right next door. Some of that you really can't. Some of it's unpredictable. You know, if the temperature gets down below zero, right at a time when they just finished consuming the honey in one frame, and the next one over doesn't have enough for them, it can spell disaster. So try again, I guess. I don't know what else to tell you on that one.
Yeah. Okay, so let's see. Marina says, sorry, I have a ton of questions. I'm just starting out. The thing is that that's what we're here for. We're having an Ask Me Anything session, so you can ask us anything. Okay, and then she says, what will you recommend for mite protection during the season and off season?
Mite protection. We like something. Here's the trouble we've got with mites right now. So there are some methods of treating for mites with synthetic chemicals that are pretty harsh. They'll do a good job killing the mites, but we don't want them in our honey. So the problem is that the mites are at their peak population during a time when we still want to have those honey supers on. They're still collecting honey. So this would be in August. And so if you could choose a treatment for mites that doesn't require you to remove your honey supers, that'd be even better. So there are a few of them out there. So oxalic acid might be a good one. Oxalic acid is naturally found in honey as well as a lot of other foods. So you're not worried about that contaminating honey that's going to be consumed later by people. So that's one method I would recommend. So before you put a treatment in, though, it's always good to test. You don't want to have to treat your bees if you don't have a mite problem. So you might want to count the mites if you're inclined to do so. I try hard not to give people advice that's out of some book, and that just never happens in the real world. You know, so what really would happen? What will really happen is people don't get around to treating their mites until the end of August, till 1st of September, Labor Day, and then by then they've got a big population of mites that it might be too late. So what's the real world remedy for that? I would probably take the honey supers off a little bit early, treat mites with whatever treatment you choose early. You can put your supers back on, and then maybe collect some more honey later in the year. That's what I would do. So get the mites out of their first extract a little bit earlier is probably good advice.
Okay, that's great advice. Thanks, Dan. And we also have in our online course, I keep talking about this because I've been working so hard on them, but in our online course called Are My Bees Healthy? There's a whole section about mites. It talks about preventing them and treating for them, testing for them, all the things that you need to know about mites. Let's see. The next question is, what is the best hive stand? Plastic, metal, cinder blocks?
Another good question, Marina. So hive stands keeps you from hurting your back and also keeps the equipment from rotting. Well, you don't want them on the ground for too long. We put hives directly on the ground for temporary all the time, especially when we're making up mating nucs. We know they're not going to be there very long, but for a permanent hive stand, I would put them on bricks, put them on something that's not going to rot. You don't want something rotting. So depending on how many colonies you have, if you've only got just a few colonies, cinder blocks work great. Put them up on bricks. That's what I would do. Get them about a foot off the ground at least. Then the skunks won't bother them. So anything that's going to stay stable without tipping. Let's suppose imagine a scenario this year. It's wet. So we're going to get flooding. The ground, if it rains a lot, the ground's already saturated. If you put your hive on something that's going to tip, when the hive starts to get heavier, it's going to press into the ground more. It might start to lean a little bit. So, and if it's wet ground all the time, it's going to rot. Eventually, your hive could tip over. So put it on something that won't rot, like cinder blocks. That's my recommendation.
Especially this year.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. We've got some more questions here. Tom Marsh says it seems. Oh, no, that's about. Okay. Being a month behind. This is from Michelle. Being a month behind, what do you look for as signs to split the hive?
Okay. Right. So we'll just, this year, we'll ignore what time of year it is. Typically, mid-April is swarm season, but who knows what it's going to do this year. So when the frames start to get full of honey, you know it's time to increase the volume of the hive or split it. When you start to see queen cups being made, and if those queen cups start to be drawn out and turn to queen cells, in other words, there's an egg in there, there's royal jelly in there, and the cell walls are being drawn out, then you know they're getting ready to swarm. That's the time to do something. It's too late to give them more space, really, at that point. So I would split the hive. If they're making queen cells, split the hive for sure. Before that, make sure you've got room before all the frames are full of honey. Those are signs it's time to split. So you should have, and then just number of bees. Look at how many bees are in the colony by the frame. So if you've got 2 boxes of bees and they're covering the frames in 2 boxes, it's time to split.
So in the spring, do people have to split their bees, or what if they don't want to increase their colony numbers?
If you don't want to increase the colony numbers, then just make sure you got plenty of room on there. Get your supers on early so that they don't swarm. So you wouldn't want to let them swarm just because you don't want to increase your colony numbers, right? If they're gonna swarm, in other words, if they've got queen cells in there, split them whether you want to or not. You're going to lose them.
Mm-hmm.
So, and you probably won't be home when it happens. So you're not going to be able to call up your beekeeping friend and say, "Hey, my bees just divided themselves. Do you want the ones that are hanging in the tree?" They'll just fly away on you most likely.
Mm-hmm.
So if you don't want to give your bees away, then split them whether you want to or not. If they're going to go.
Mm-hmm. When we see a swarm fly away, we're like, "Shoom! There goes a couple $100."
Yeah.
Every time.
Yeah.
And they are a lot less likely to be able to survive. What percent, like you told me a percentage of...
Yeah, so only about 20% of the bees that swarm are successful in finding a new home that's suitable to get them through the next year. In other words, a new accommodations that have all the requirements they need to gather enough honey and stay sheltered and be successful the next year. So there's an 80% chance those bees you lose in a swarm are going to die. So keep them contained if you can, and if you can't, be sure to catch them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so Tom's making some good comments. He said they raise a lot of bees in much colder places. I feel we did to help the colonies with more care than those who live south of us. And then he also, which is a really good point, when we're in colder weather, we have to prepare for winter and do some extra considerations. And then he also said, I feel using bees from our climate and geography will ensure a healthier colony. Do you want to comment on that?
Well, it's well put. So geography, yeah. So we want not all the places we have that would be easy for us to put bees in would be the best place for the bees. So sometimes we're near pesticides, sometimes we're in the shade, sometimes we're too cold. So try to find the best place for your bees that you can to help them out. If you're going to keep bees, they'll surprise you too, though. Sometimes you never know what's a good place and what isn't until you try it for a couple of years. So I know one of my beekeeping mentors, he said you need to really try a beekeeping location for 3 years before you know if it's a good honey producing location. So this year, I think we could just try a new location 1 year. It's pretty much everywhere is going to be a good location this year. There's so much snow. There's going to be so many flowers, and that I think you'll do well no matter where you put them this year.
Mhm. Okay, we have a comment from email by Tazy, and it's about Layens hives. We've been getting a lot of questions about that. I think that's something popular on YouTube. She says, I'm considering ordering a nuke from your company. I'm very interested in your feral bee project and was wondering if you ever allow people to provide you with a Layens box to let the nuke start in instead of a deep Langstroth. Can you do that? And then she said, the frames that come with the nuke, are they, oh wait, I'll ask that next part.
Okay.
Next. Okay. So do you want to talk about Layens hives and what, you answered her question, but what do you think? Can she provide you a Layens hive for you to start her nuke in? And why or why not?
We would discourage you from doing that just because here's the thing. So if we raise a new queen from one of our feral queens, and suppose that something goes wrong, she doesn't turn out to be a good one for whatever reason. So we've put that queen and those bees on your frames, and now you're stuck with a subpar queen on your frames. We can't really fix that. At least we can't fix it in any sort of a quick method to get you going off to a good start this year.
So oh, sorry, keep going. I had a comment and then I forgot.
Go ahead.
I forgot what it was.
So you'd be better off. You're going to be better off not doing that, because we can't guarantee that the queen. Well, let me back up. We can guarantee that you get a good queen, but not if we put them on your frames. So the way we arrange our nukes is we always plan to have a few extra, because there's always a few queens that something goes wrong with, and we weed those out at the time people pick them up. We look at them, evaluate them, analyze them before we send you home with them. So we can't do that if we put it on your Layens hive. So I would encourage you to keep bees in a Layens hive, though I think it's a good idea. That size of the frame is similar to the jumbo size frame, or the modified Dadant size frame that used to be used here in the U.S. a while back, not really that long ago. A lot of countries still use a jumbo size Langstroth frame, which is about the same, is kind of the same idea. It's a bigger brood frame. And so I imagine that the Layens hives, I'm going to build one of those this year, and we're going to put some bees in it, and we're going to make some videos about it and see how it goes. So Layens hives are kind of the trend right now. So good job trying one of those, but I recommend that you get a package of bees, a 3-pound package, and put it in your Layens hive rather than try to adapt a nuke on Langstroth frames into your hive. So
we watched a video about adapting a deep frame for a Layens hive, and it it showed a beekeeper with frames of live bees, and they're trying to screw the top bar of the Layens hive frame onto it. And I think that is a possibility to do, but it seems like it might be intimidating for brand new beekeepers to try to be using power tools and their gloves and their veil and bees, and it just seems like it might be a little intimidating. But if you're feeling really brave and excited to do it, that seems like it could be a good solution for that.
Yeah, some people want the full experience from start to finish, all the difficult parts of it too. So if you're brave enough to try it, watch a couple of those videos on how to adapt a Langstroth frame into a Layens hive, and give it a try.
Okay, let's see. Michelle says, I know that bee breeds end up as mutts, but do you have any breed that you like? Any variety?
Yes, I suppose the ones that have their preferences. It's interesting. It's kind of like looking through a hatchery catalog of chicks. You're trying to decide what breed of chickens that you want to keep. Or people really like that kind of thing, and that's okay. I suppose I have my favorite color of queen bees. I like the look of those Italians, the lighter colored bees. But that has nothing to do with whether that bee's going to have survivability, really. So try to ignore those kinds of things. I like gentle bees. It's so much more fun to work with nice bees rather than mean bees. I mean, the honey's the what we're after really, but is it really worth putting up with mean bees in order to get some honey? Maybe it is. Not in your backyard though, with the kids and pets and neighbors around.
Mhm.
So my favorite variety of bees are the ones that are alive and that they're nice.
Yeah. And he uses a variety of bees, but he has his own line of bees from the Feral Bee Project, which is not really a specific variety. They are kind of mutts, but they are from our area and really adapted and surviving, in the cliffs of southern Utah. And we've pulled that genetics into our breeding program. And anyway, we have our own. So if you buy bees from us, if you buy nucs from us, you'll get a queen from that line. And some people like it because it seems to be adapted to our climate.
So we don't know exactly what variety of bees we
Mhm.
have. We know they're not Africanized. They're Italian in color, but I don't really know for sure what their genetic is. Speaking of the feral bees.
So Michelle asks, do you still have nukes available of the feral line? We do. You can go to thehoneycompany.com and then or /shop, or just go to the main page and click shop, however you get there. And then we do have those available, and they're for pickup in May. So they come on 5 deep frames, so they would only fit in a deep Langstroth box. So plan on you'd need to have that equipment to match those nukes.
I just heard somebody say out there, "Oh shoot, I wanted a nuke with those ferals in there, but I'm keeping bees in mediums." That's okay. You can put a deep frame in 2 mediums with a little bit of space left over.
It's gonna be underneath of it, but it's definitely doable. Okay, so we have Christine says, I am thinking about starting a beehive from June to September in our development. A truck goes in the streets and does mosquito fogging. It would be about 30 feet from where the hive would be in our yard. Would that be a problem?
Yeah, 30 feet. Yeah, that's a big problem. It might drift over there. Of course, we don't know which way the wind's going to be blowing. We don't know what time of day they're going to be spraying for mosquitoes. We know what time they're supposed to spray for mosquitoes, but will they do that or not? So I just don't mess with those things. I know that's not the answer you want to hear, but if there's a chance of getting sprayed, just find another place to put your bees. I don't have, I can give you some details on how to protect your hives if it's just not an off them somewhere else. You can contact the mosquito abatement and give them your address. And depending on who's driving the truck that day, they might remember, they might not. They might get the memo. You could cover your bees, but then you got to know when they're coming to put a sheet over them or something so it doesn't put a tarp on them so that spray doesn't drift onto them.
Or sprinkler on the hive so they don't fly out.
Yeah, if there's so a sprinkler will keep them home for the day, but so there's just depends on how much trouble you want to go to. You got to decide if the trouble to contact mosquito abatement and then hope it's done right and take all the other precautions that there are is worth it, or is it just easier to find another place to put your bees?
Mhm. So you don't have to keep bees in your yard. There's a lot of people around who want bees around on their property, and you can find that too. It doesn't have to be in your yard. In fact, sometimes the best apiary is away from home, and that's okay. It means you have to drive to your apiary, but that's okay.
Yeah, you'd be surprised how easy it is to find another place to put your bees and how many people might want them there. So
Mhm.
that's consider the upside to not keeping the bees right in your own backyard. There are some.
Yeah, so Marina says, how far away do you place your colonies? I think that means how far apart. Is that right, Marina? If it's different from that, will you let us know? But yeah, what distance do you put between your colonies?
Uh, I'd like to have enough distance between the colonies so that I can walk between them. So just a few feet, really. So you think about the pallets that commercial beekeepers put their hives on, they're right next to each other. In fact, we have migratory tops on our beehives, and so that they're made to sit right next to each other when they're on the truck.
You want to show one of those?
So this is a migratory top, so it only goes over the edge, the front edge, and the back, right? but it's flush with the side of the hive. Uh, doesn't hang over on the sides. So you can stack them right next to each other, touching each other. It's done all the time, but you'll minimize drift. You'll get less drift. You'll be able to manage the hives a little bit better if they're just far enough apart for you to walk in between. So, 2, 3, 4 feet apart.
So yeah, what's drift?
Drift means so if the bees are coming back to their colony and then they get confused, they might drift into another colony. So let's say the wind was blowing this way, then the bees might come in and the wind blows them down into the other colony. So that happens. There's more drift than you might think. Bees do have a good sense of direction. They are usually pretty good about getting back at their own address, but there is some drift. So drift is a problem only when there's disease present. So drifting can spread disease. That's what we don't want to have happen. So give them a little distance in between hives. That'll help prevent that, or at least face them in directions, right? So you could put them, they could be touching at the back corner, but the one's facing this way, the other one's facing a different way. So, but bees are good. You ever seen one of those beach house trailer trucks? What are those things? They've got bees stacked up on a trailer, all right next to each other, and there could be dozens of bees that are right next to each other, and still most of the time they find their way back into their own hive where they're supposed to be. So,
and like in Slovenia, which is a major, like the Carniolan breed of honeybees, which is one of the major varieties, is from Slovenia. Anyway, they have hive houses like Stan's talking about, and they paint each like individual hive a different color to help the bees kind of recognize and get back into the correct places.
So yeah, there's things you can do if you need to keep them right together. Some people have space constraints, and so you need to keep them right close to each other. That's okay too. You might paint the hives a different color. That'll help them get back in the right spot. You might put an entrance reducer where the hives are touching, so the entrance on one colony is on the opposite corner of the other one, so that'll help spread them apart. Anyway, there's things you can do but I wouldn't be afraid to put them right next to each other if you need to.
So in our free course, there's a ton of information too. Sign up for that. But it has a ton of information about how to decide where to put your colonies, and then a whole section about drift and managing drift, especially in package bees. So sign up for that and you can get even more details than what Stan just shared. Yeah. Anything else you want to?
Nope, another good question. Thanks for that. Keep them coming.
Yeah. Okay. So Matt says, thanks for answering my email. If my colonies supers that I lost still have plenty of resources. So he lost the colonies and his hive still has tons of wax and honey and everything. Would you recommend a nuc or a 3-pound box of bees? What would get them a better start?
So I would start early. So I'd get package bees if I were you, Matt, and I'd put them on the honey that's left over. Then you won't have to feed them. That's nice. Not, if it's any consolation, you won't have to feed your bees now. Just give them a good solid frame of honey or more, whatever you've got left, and they'll take right off. So you can get your packages earlier than you can get the nucs. So that's what I would do. You'd be off to a quicker start with package bees this year.
Yep. And so the advantage for nucs is that when packages are brand new, when all the equipment and everything is brand new and there's no drawn comb, there's a percentage of packages that fail. Getting started, there's like a package transition period, and it's a tough time, especially if the weather is like cold and warm, then cold and warm. It just kind of makes it hard for them to draw out the comb and for the queen to start laying eggs. So if you're brand new to beekeeping, then we probably would recommend a nuc, because Stan will do all that hard part for you, and you buy it later on when the bees have already like established themselves in the colony. Does that make sense? So packages are great if you already have that set up and established, and nucleus colonies are great if you're new to starting out, and then he's the expert. He can get you through, that tricky transition period and sell you a colony, weed out the ones that fail and sell you a
It's the best choice if you've got, if you keep buying nukes, then you got more frames than you've got boxes to put them in. So
He says, we need a feral beekeeper t-shirt. That's a good idea. Yep, we'll start taking design submissions.
yeah, I like that. Good idea.
Okay, and then Matt says, thank you for the answer. Okay, so I have another question from Kip.
Okay.
You ready?
Okay. Yep.
Kip said, I just ordered 2 nukes for this spring. I was wondering where you recommend I get the deep Langstroth boxes. You mentioned if we get 4 boxes this year, the hive would likely fill them up on account of the good water we're getting. Should I buy all 4 boxes for each hive now?
I probably would. You'd save some money on shipping. I guess that depends on where you buy them. I don't have a local place to recommend right now. I know of several places you can go to get boxes, but I'm not sure of the quality of them for one. So I'm not worried about competition about that kind of thing. If I knew of a really good local source, I'd love to recommend somebody. We get that question all the time. So I would order them from a place, one of the big beekeeper supplies that you can find online, such as Man Lake or Dayton. You can't go wrong there. Beeline supplies.
Blue Sky Bee Supply.
Yeah, we do some business with them. They're good ones. So I don't have a good local source for bee boxes. We used to. I would recommend us. We used to, but when we moved moved too far away for people to drive to pick up bee equipment. So that ended that. So
yeah, and so one of our criteria is we like to look for domestically produced bee hives. So that's why Man Lake has a production facility in Minnesota. So we just like to recommend local, USA kind of products. That's one of our criteria. So that's why we're saying.
Right. So if I knew somebody that was building them here in Utah, I'd recommend them first. But all the bee supply places I know of here locally are buying them from out of state,
from China
and from China. So I don't know what to tell you.
So, but if you need it, you can get it at some local places too. Do any of you guys know anyone that is building bee boxes and selling them? If so, we'd love to know about it so we can recommend. We get lots of questions about that. And so, say we're saying 4 boxes this year. Normally we say 3 to 4 boxes. And then on an average year, your bees would fill up 3 boxes by the end of the summer. And on a really good year, which we hope this is because it's so wet, that they would fill up all 4. So just so you know, they start out in 1 box. And then once they fill that up and kind of draw out comb all the way to the sides of the box, then you add another box and wait for them to fill it up like that. And then you add boxes over time. So it is possible to buy the boxes one at a time. But the danger of that is that sometimes the bees get really productive really fast and they get on a good nectar flow and they can grow faster than you can get the boxes. And so we recommend getting the boxes and having them on site so that when the bees fill it up, it's not an emergency run to the farm store to get a box that you didn't plan on. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and it won't hurt if you over ordered a box or 2. It's nice to have that handy because once people find out you're a beekeeper, they're going to call you when they've got a swarm hanging in their trees. You don't want to have to scramble for another box when you've got a swarm that's getting loose. So,
and Stan's preference is that he uses in his own operation, he uses mostly all deep Langstroth hives. And so the advantage of that is that when that happens, any box can become a new hive by just adding a lid and a bottom board to that box. So boxes and honey supers and brood boxes, they're all the same thing for our operation and they're all interchangeable. So he can, if he needs to split it in a hurry or if he needs to catch a swarm, it's just a matter of finding the lid and bottom instead of having to find a whole hive.
Right. So if it's not a matter of economics, buy an extra lid and an extra bottom board and an extra box and the frames to go in them. So that you'll be prepared to split a hive or to catch a swarm. So if you don't use it this year, you will next year.
And if you're, if you're gonna redneck it a little bit, you can use cardboard temporarily while you get the bottom board. Anyway, but you wouldn't want to use that over time or if it's wet. Okay, so we have some more questions. Okay, I have seen several used equipment local listings for sale. What would you recommend for disinfecting used used bee equipment?
A pressure washer works good. You scrape the frames down, scrape it down the foundation. So I wouldn't recommend using any kind of disinfectant on them. I would decide if they're healthy or not. If they're not really in good shape, I wouldn't buy them, or I would throw them away. Or at least I would take the foundation out of the frames and throw that away and make them start over make them draw a new comb.
Mm-hmm. So what's the danger?
So the most important thing you need to do is be able to identify American foul brood. So if there's American foul brood or signs of it that was in that comb, then you don't want it. Then I wouldn't use those frames. American foul brood has a specific smell to it. That's why it's called foul, as in a foul smell to it. So if you're not familiar with that smell, how would you know what it is? If you've never noticed it and had somebody point it out to you before and diagnose it, you really wouldn't. So you're going to have to rely on pictures. So I get on the internet, and I don't know if we have pictures
on our online courses. Yeah.
Do we have pictures of it?
Okay. Are my bees healthy? We have pictures of the scales that foul brood
So
leaves
look at our website first for pictures of what American foul brood looks like. And if you don't see any of that kind of sign or symptoms in the used equipment, then I'd go ahead and buy it and use it. So if there's a little bit of wax moth in there that's left some webbing or some cocoons or something in there, I wouldn't be afraid of that. It's not going to hurt anything. You ought to know what chalk brood looks like. If you could identify chalk brood, that might help you avoid buying some used equipment that's not healthy. Most of the time, buying used equipment, you're going to be okay. But you need to identify those diseases that are contagious or that could spread from one year to the next.
Mm-hmm.
So those are the two. Let's see. Look up American foul brood, and then look up chalk brood. Look at those signs. If you don't see signs like that, then I wouldn't be too afraid to buy it and use it.
Yeah. And then, so we have even a lesson in our online course called Smells in the Hive. And we can't really send smells through the internet yet, right? Just kidding. But it kind of gives a description of what the different things smell like. And the reason foul brood is so dangerous is that it can go into spore form, and woodenware can hold those spores. And so that's kind of the main disease that you watch out for that can be stored in woodenware.
Right.
Okay.
So while we're on the subject too of foul brood, so we know that foul brood spores won't germinate if they're encased in wax, in propolis, in paint. So if you're going to torch the inside of your hive just to make sure foul brood doesn't spread, we don't need to blacken the thing. You don't need to turn it to charcoal. You just need to melt the wax around it. And so those spores, if there are any in there, get covered in wax or plant resins, the wood resins. You just boil the little resins that are in the wood without cooking the thing too bad, and you could dip them. You could paint the inside if you want. I don't know that I recommend doing that, but you can. That'll kill any foul brood spores. It won't
seal it in.
It won't kill them, but it'll seal them in so the bees can't pick them up and spread them.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And there's foul brood in every hive, but we just don't want to get them overloaded with foul brood spores, right?
Yeah, just for your gee whiz, all healthy colonies have foul brood spores in them.
Mm-hmm.
So
it's one of those part of the microflora of the beehive that when it's in normal balance, it's good, it's fine. But when it gets out of balance, it's a problem. Okay, next question.
Yep.
Okay, Cameron Blake says, do you think flow hives work? Do you have any experience with them?
Cameron, thanks for asking a question and joining us today. So the flow hives, I do actually have a couple of flow hives. I've never used them. I need to. That's so they work. They wouldn't still be on the market if they didn't. So you see a lot of bee gadgets and trends come and go, and they're around for a year or two and then disappear. So flow hives will work. Wouldn't use them as a substitute for knowledge about what's going on in the beehives. In other
Mhm.
words, don't use them as a turnkey beehive. You don't just turn the key, drain the honey out, and call it good. You got to know what's going inside the hive. But they are expensive. They are trendy. They are snooty. Uh,
Snoopy.
so they are fancy, but they do work. So, okay, we're all for anything that promotes bees and encourages beekeepers and helps you enjoy your hobby more. So try a Flow Hive if you want.
It's kind of a fun thing, fun concept. One thing is that the Flow Hive, like by the time you add up the price of a few flow frames and maybe the boxes, all of the things, then it quickly adds up to the cost of an extractor. And so the advantage, so for people like us who have like a ton of hives, it makes sense to have the extractor, right? But if you just have one hive, then it might make sense to have the Flow Hive. But the advantage to having an extractor for like the same price is that you can extract honey from any frame, whereas the Flow Hive, you can only extract honey from the flow frames, like without an extractor, right?
Yeah. And I would recommend trying just the regular standard length of hives to begin with. And if you're successful with that for a year or so, then branch out into something a little bit different like the Flow Hive.
Yep. So, anything else about flow hives? Okay. What's your opinion about using a queen excluder?
Queen excluder is a handy tool. So it can be a problem, especially if you're just starting out with new equipment. It'll congest the hive, is what it does. So bees don't like to go through the queen excluder, and they kind of have to learn how to go through it. They have to have some encouragement to go through it. Um, the reason that people like to use a queen excluder is to keep brood out of their honey frames. So if you only have a couple of colonies, it's not really that big of a deal to take a frame of brood. Let's say your queen goes all the way up into your third box and lays eggs in a frame that you were planning on the bees putting honey in so you could extract it. Well, you're going to have to sort those frames out at the time you take the honey off of the bees anyway. So what you do is you just swap that frame of brood with one of the frames of honey down below and just move it. So there's just really not a really good argument. There's several others for using queen excluders and keeping the queen out of your honey supers, but they're not really. It's not a necessary piece of equipment, and the arguments you can argue either way. We just don't use them because I don't want to restrict the queen. I don't want to shut down any brood rearing. The more bees that we can get in the hive, the better. And if she wants to move up and lay eggs in more frames than we have available for her to lay down below, then great, let her do it.
We trust that she knows what she's doing, like she has
Yeah.
those good instincts.
So I don't recommend queen excluders, but on occasion I'll use one of them. You'll see some videos that we have on our bee courses where we use it as a handy tool to manage your bees with. But for let's say it this way, so for all summer long honey production, I don't recommend them. I just recommend them on an occasion when you need to isolate the queen in a specific box.
Yep. And this old time saying is, do you remember?
Well, you might hear it say that a queen excluder is a honey excluder. That's because it congests the hive so much. So,
Which means that the bees have a hard time getting to the place where they'd store the honey, and it takes some extra effort to do that.
So you'll find some things that I mean. There's something about the record breaking honey crop that was made in one year, and I don't know where it was. I think it was Australia, someplace, and that beekeeper used queen excluders. Well, so if he broke the record with queen excluders, think about how much more honey he would have got if he didn't use them. So that's kind of a silly thing to say.
But anyway, let's see. Okay, maybe we'll do one more question and then we'll end for the night. Unless anybody type your question or I'll ask this one. Okay, this is Jeremy and he's asking about nucs and he says, do the bees receive any treatments prior to being sold? If so, can you tell me which treatments and when?
Yes. So this year we'll probably be making our nukes up from not only our own bees, but we might purchase packages depending on how many orders we get and make up nukes from those. So I know that our package supplier will have treated his bees for mites and probably a treatment for foul brood before they were made up.
And he needs to do that to cross state lines. So,
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So in order to get a health certificate, it's required sometimes to do those things. So we don't have control of that. So as a matter of liability, we'll treat our bees also before we make up your nukes. So they have as clean a start as possible.
Mhm.
Right. So what you do with them after that is up to you, but they will be treated for mites and they will be treated for foul brood, American foul brood, and for European foul brood before you pick them up.
Okay. Awesome. And then let's see. I'm just going to check if there's any more questions from here. We had lots of thank yous. You guys, thanks so much for coming. And we're going to wrap up this Ask Me Anything session. And we hope that it helped you. If this is, do you guys think it would be something that would be useful to do again sometime? Would you like to have more questions answered and asked and answered? If you do, will you comment that in the chat box so that we can see the helpfulness of it and like evaluate, the timing of our next one?
Thanks for joining us. We were planning on doing this in the beehive rather than sitting
Mhm.
down, and so we could actually show you inside of the beehive. But it's too cold yet this year to do that. So maybe in the next one, we'll answer your questions from inside the beehive.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Anything else that you want to add?
I guess not for now. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah. Thanks everyone for coming. And just so glad that you're coming, and check out our free online course. We hope you sign up for that and more if you want. But that's a really great place to start. Okay. Anything else?
Bye for now.
Okay. See ya.